What is going on? Everybody, hello. It is the Daily Destroyer, Week 14 DFS show, Dynasty Warzone Network. As always, joined by Lou, I am Tyler. Let's break down that slate, as we always do. Starting off at the quarterback position. When you're looking at this list of quarterbacks here, Lou, price, always something we take into account. Where do your eyes draw you? What's like one of the plays that like you're either like pretty locked on to as a guy you're going to be clicking to get in those matchups, or somebody you're absolutely avoiding? Just what are your thoughts right off the bat here at QB?
Yeah, I think it's one of those weeks where you have a lot of options at quarterback. I think you could go basically either side of this Detroit Minnesota game. If you want to pay down, you have Goff and Huntley right there, 55, 5,600. The top end guys aren't in all that great of matchups. Hurts is probably the best of the three 8K quarterbacks. So I think at weeks like this, I'm fine with paying down. It's tough for me deciding between Huntley and Goff, I think. Huntley has a good floor. His last 6 games that he's played, he has at least 40 rushing yards on the ground. So he has a decent floor because of his rushing. I don't know how much he'll do passing, however. He did rush in a touchdown last week, so you have that sort of upside to him. I think Goff is more likely to hit the 300-yard bonus, have multiple touchdowns thrown. So sell me on one of these two guys. Which one you like more than the other?
Um, in cash, I'm probably going Huntley, just because I think there's a little bit more of a floor there. I love what Jared Goff is doing. That the Lions are operating at a borderline elite level on offense. It's just at the same time, am I trusting Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions quite yet? No, I'm not. I think I'm cool with Jared Goff, but I'll likely go Tyler Huntley. It's $100 cheaper. We're getting the rushing there. I'm not necessarily scared. The Pitt defense has been solid, but it's nothing that I'm necessarily scared of. You can definitely rush on the Pitt defense. So to me, I'll just be leaning Huntley. I think it just comes down to that rushing floor that I'm looking for in cash. Do I think the ceiling is as high? I think like you mentioned, Goff could throw for 303. We don't see Huntley doing that, but the floor just feels better with Huntley, and he seems like a pretty safe cash play for the week. I think just today's Friday, we're recording. Harbaugh just said that it'll be Tyler this week, so Huntley seems like the guy for me.
Yeah, I think Huntley is probably where I'll end up going. I might feel more safety paying up to Geno. Not really sure.
Geno's a guy
There's not a ton of like other value in these other positions. Guys that we've been playing for value in the past few weeks have been priced up a little bit. So depends on where the rest of my lineup ends up. But yeah, I think I lean Huntley as well for cash.
Yeah. Other side of the ball with Goff though, Kirk Cousins. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I like Kirk Cousins. I think he's generally safe. Justin Jefferson has just been smashing pretty much every week, and he's got a very easy matchup here this week, which helps Cousins as far as getting floor. I think Cousins will be pretty popular. That stack,
And
this is going to be the most common game I think people are going to go to for stacking purposes. So it's tough to do that in tournaments because you kind of like, how are you getting different? You probably have to go with like Hawkinson and not Jefferson or something like that in that lineup, which I don't really like playing Cousins without Jefferson. So I think it's fine if you do it in cash. I think I prefer Geno, however, but yeah, I think Cousins is in a good spot this week as well.
we forget that Justin Jefferson went 3 for 14 last time they met the Lions, though.
Yeah.
Not saying he's going to do it again, but I just thought that was interesting that we saw Jay Jeff's worst game of the year come against the Lions in week 3. So maybe he has a little bit of a revenge narrative here. Anyways, quarterback, pool of 3, Lou.
Huntley, Geno, and Goff.
Going over to the running backs, I don't think there's a lot of really clear options here. There's not a lot of value to be had, in my opinion, at least as of yet. Not enough injury news has been out. I know there's some we're still waiting on that could free something up, but as of Friday, there's not a ton. I think the one guy that I am pretty comfortable locking into my lineups at this point in time is going to be DeAndre Swift at 5,800. He's below 6K, and we just saw his workload ramp back up. I know he was injured a bit, and they were kind of laying off him. And Jamal Williams is still going to be a factor, but what I saw last week out of DeAndre Swift makes me feel good about playing him. Like he's getting enough run. We know he's got the burst. They're using, still using Jamal around the goal line, but they'll still use Swift. There's just enough work at 5,800 in a matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, who are, over the last 5 weeks have been like a print fest in terms of who you're playing against. Their defense has been putrid. Vikings defense is terrible. So I just look at Swift at this price at 58, and I just find that it is an easy way to save money early.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's tough to find some savings on the slate. So like I think as we get there, like these guys like Swift that are under 6K are just so juicy in this matchup that everyone wants to play this game. I think I'll probably end up doing it. You almost have to. Like he's getting a lot of high value touches. He's getting touchdowns. He's getting the receptions. He's at this point might be safer than Jamal Williams, right? Like Jamal Williams basically the same price.
Jamal Williams needs a touchdown. I mean, and
yeah,
Swift doesn't. Yeah,
and in tournaments he probably needs two. Maybe not at that price, but the way he's been playing, like he gets basically a touchdown every week though. So it's also hard to just get away from him, but that might be a good pivot in tournaments. People are finally back on Swift. Now you play Jamal and hope that he gets those 2 touchdowns and Swift gets done. So that's probably in cash you'd play Swift, but in tournaments, Jamal might actually be the better play this week.
All right, let's go to the top because I think the questions at the running backs lie with who's going to be, which higher price running backs do we go to? Let's do an arbitrary cutoff at Joe Mixon at 69 and work our way up. You got Mixon at 69, Dalvin 73, Chubb 78, Henry 79, Saquon 8, McCaffrey 85. Out of those, what is that? 6 guys that I would consider the higher priced dudes. Is there a clear fade or a clear lock in there for you? Your thoughts?
Dalvin's my favorite GPP play. I think everyone's going to want to be playing the passing attack of these teams in this game. I think there'll be people that play Dalvin. He won't be like unowned because of this game, but he's probably my favorite of them in tournaments because 7,300 people aren't really clicking that price in general. But I think Derrick Henry is potentially going to be the highest owned running back on the slate. He's facing the Jags. He smashes every team in his division every time, averaging over 100 yards rushing a game against the Jags in 11 matchups against them. He didn't do that much last week, but there's this narrative around Derrick Henry when it gets cold out. D-Hember. It didn't work out last week. He only had 30 yards, but I think people are going to go right back on him this week, 7,900. Under 8K for Derrick Henry, people are going to look at that and just feel like it's cheap for a guy who is almost a lock to get 100 yards and a touchdown this week. So Henry's probably the guy I'm going to in tournaments, but that's going to leave Saquon Barkley under-owned. So I think Barkley is a great pivot in tournaments where the way you can beat up on the Eagles defense a little bit is by running the ball. And Saquon has a very high percentage of the rushing share.
Mm-hmm.
So really like Saquon was a pivot off of Henry in tournaments. So those are probably my favorite plays up top.
Going down towards the middle a little bit, around that DeAndre Swift range, 58. There's a couple names that stick out to me. First is going to be Isaiah Pacheco, 57. We've seen a pretty solid workload there, and we know that passing against the Broncos isn't necessarily easy. I still expect Mahomes to be fine, but the path of least resistance, let's say, when moving the ball against the Broncos is going to definitely be on the ground. And I think that when I last checked, the Chiefs are also, I think, 9-point favorites, which really lend themselves to wanting to run the ball in this one. So Pacheco at 57, and Donta Foreman just got cleared. He's going to play 54. He's in a very soft matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. I think the concern with both these guys, Pacheco and Foreman, is they don't catch a lot of balls, but they both get a lot of volume in some matchups here. So, those two guys that I find myself wanting to click, kind of leaning Foreman over Pacheco if I need to, but your thoughts on these two?
Yeah, I think in Kansas City, they have pretty clear running back roles where Pacheco is more of the rusher and McKinnon's more of the pass catching back. In a game like this, against the Broncos, 9.5-point favorites, I would expect Pacheco to get more work than McKinnon, just because I don't expect this game to be any sort of shootout. It's gonna be more of a grudge match. So I probably prefer Checo between the two on that team, but I don't know. It's tough to trust Pacheco
It
because he
is.
doesn't have for DK scoring specifically. He doesn't really have a pass catching role. Neither does Donta Foreman, but I think he's got a much better matchup on the ground. Would be interesting if Rashad White, if Fournette were to miss, but I don't really expect Fournette to miss. But they also have the hardest matchup possible. So not really loving too many of the guys in this range. I think for price, I would probably lean Foreman because 5,400. There's a lot you could do saving there, but all these guys are kind of meh. Um, Probably the only guy I'm interested in looking at cheap is Travis Homer, and that's just if he's the only guy for the
Left
Seahawks,
standing,
would
yes.
prefer him over these guys. But also just the fact that the running back situation there, I think he'll get work either way. So probably in tournaments you can play him because he likely has a passing role either way. Um, no matter who the starting running back is there, he'll probably get some work this week anyway, and it's a very good matchup against the Panthers.
And we know that the Houston Texans are just a good matchup for running backs in general. The price is not exactly what a smash here, but Pollard 67 and Zeke sitting down at 61. Is there interest there in a really good matchup where we expect a lot of points from the Cowboys? And they're going to be up, so probably a lot of points on the ground.
Yeah, they have the easiest matchup for running backs against the Texans. Cowboys have just been putting up points too.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Real life points. So the issue I have with this is choosing between the two. So both of them are in a good matchup. We've seen both of them probably could get a touchdown in this game. Pollard has the bigger big play ability, and against the Texans, man, he could have 40-yard touchdowns very easily here, I think. Both of them are good. I probably won't go there in cash because of their split. Pollard has taken a back seat to Zeke since Zeke's back, but less so than he had earlier in the year. So Pollard still has a pretty decent role. And if they're just up big, we saw it last week as well. They're both going to get theirs. And the Texans actually have been somewhat decent against opposing wide receivers and QBs. Part of that is because they're just a run funnel. But at the end of the day, I probably have a lot more interest in both of these backs than someone like CeeDee Lamb this week. So I think I'm fine playing them. I don't think I'll do it in cash, but I think tournaments, they're very fair game.
Any Zonovan Knight love left? 5,100. I know it's Buffalo.
Yeah.
The defense is tough, but he's the guy. I think the matchup isn't as bad as it seems, and the coaches seem to really like him. He looks like the best back we've seen on the Jets since Breece Hall. The price seems to be right. I mean, obviously, it's probably easier to go Travis Homer, but let's just say we do see DJ Dallas or Walker or something. We're not thinking about Homer in that same range. Is there any thoughts on going back to Zonovan Knight?
Yeah. I think I'm not trying to play too much from this game. I think it's divisional game. They both still have a chance of winning this division. If Jets were to win this game, I think they have a decent shot, but Jets still trying to make the playoffs. They're going to be playing this game hard. Could be somewhat defensive and more of a grudge match. I think Zonovan is the guy there though at this point. So 5,100, the price tag itself, he probably has more of a pass game role than Foreman and Pacheco. And I think I might prefer him over them because of price, but I don't know if I can do it in cash with this matchup. I think if you want to play the Jets win this game in that narrative in tournaments, you play him and their defense together. Their defense did somewhat shut down Allen last time they played. They had 2 picks on him and didn't allow a touchdown. So I think Zonovan is good in tournaments. I don't know if I could do it in cash, though.
Any other running backs you want to talk about before we jump to the pool and shift over?
No, I think Miles Sanders maybe is a good price, 6,200. He's had some big games this season. might get overlooked with like Zeke there. He's around Swift price, so he's probably the only other one that I'd consider.
All right. Going over to the wide receivers. I mean, the question we ask ourselves, are we just going back to almost exactly what we did last week? And that's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, under 8K, been on an absolute tear, gets touchdowns, gets tons of volume, gets lots of yards, and he's still not priced in the 8,000s yet. Your thoughts on Amon-Ra St. Brown in cash? Auto click again, or do you have pause?
Yeah, I feel like it's tough because he's been on such a run on touchdowns, and this game should be high scoring, and he's such a crazy target share in this offense. I'll probably be throwing a lot, so it's hard not to click him. He's going to be so owned at this point. It's almost like a block. You just kind of lock him in. I think if he was like 8,400, there'd be a lot more pause, but yeah, I feel like he's still probably going to get you 20 fantasy points. He's going to get, like 8 catches, 100 yards, even if he doesn't get a touchdown. So he's pretty much a lock probably until he fails in your cash lineups.
And of that same vein and same thought, almost identically, Garrett Wilson, 5,900, under 6K, also been on a tear, getting crazy volume, looks like he's elite. Under 6K for Garrett Wilson. I know the matchup, we talked about it, but I mean, they had a really tough matchup last week, and it didn't matter. So, Garrett Wilson to me. Are we going right back to Amon-Ra and going right back to Garrett Wilson, starting how we started last week?
I think I'm more likely to fade Wilson. Now his price is getting up there. Not the easiest matchup for them, but again, like he's their guy, and they need to win this game. Guys around him, like crazy to think, but Deebo Samuel is only 200 more than him right now. He's just getting up there in price. There's Devonta Smith and Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, like these other guys that are pretty close in price to him. I think he'll be very owned once again, though. And another one, like until he fails, like people are gonna still plug him in. So it's probably his last week under 6K. So I think he's still worthy of cash consideration. But to me, like if I need to save the money at wide receiver, I think he would be the one that I would come off of.
Understood. All right, let's talk about some guys at the top now. Obviously we'll omit Amon-Ra St. Brown because we've already talked about him, but that leaves 4 ahead of him. Jamar Chase, back healthy, 79. A.J. Brown, tore it up last week, 8K. Stephon Diggs, always seems like a good play, but we talked about, missing this game, 83. And then all the way 9K, J. Jeff in this game against the Lions where we expect there to be a lot of points. Where does your interest lie? Where's your fades lie in these top 4 in Chase, A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, and Justin Jefferson?
Jefferson's probably my favorite. Just love this game. He pretty much kills it every week. This is another matchup where likely over 100 yards, probably going to get a touchdown or 2 in this game. Like he's definitely my favorite. Don't love Diggs because of this matchup. But I mean, you can play Diggs any week. AJ Brown, even after smashing last week, he's kind of like the Nick Chubb of wide receivers, where he just keeps coming in under owned each and every week, even when he smashes. He can smash any week. I probably would prefer him to Diggs this week. Jamar Chase, now he's back healthy, under 8K. I like him too. So probably my favorite is Justin Jefferson. And then from there, I'll probably go A.J. Brown because I think he'll be lower owned than the other 3.
Yeah. A.J. Brown's one of the ones I'm looking at this week if I got the money to do it. The Giants run a lot of man coverage. And if there's one wide receiver I know that can absolutely obliterate man coverage, it's A.J. Brown. I think it's I made a call in another pod that we saw a huge A.J. Brown game, revenge game against the Titans, but I think we see something similar again this week. I'm calling 2 touchdowns, 100 yards to A.J. Brown. So that said, I'm trying to fit him in the lineups. Don't know if I can do it for sure yet, but I really like him. Let's cut.
The only issue I have, he does have somewhat of a tough matchup. Giants have been holding wide receivers decently well, so that's my one concern. But I think just because of ownership, and he's one of those guys that I want to call him completely like matchup proof. But we've seen him, grown ass man. He can beat pretty much any matchup.
Let's shift down into some cheaper plays. I expect there to be a lot of interest in. I think two that stick out to me is going to be DJ Moore at 55. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to say, see him with Darnold 2 weeks ago and say, wow, like they got it all sorted out. And then even cheaper, Adam Thielen at 49. We talked about a lot of points in this matchup. Adam Thielen is probably going to be a really popular play because he is only 49, but it is a good way to get cheap in a game where we expect there to be a lot of points. And he's the second or third option there. So I expect there to be a decent amount of Thielen. Probably a decent amount of DJ Moore, but not as much. But those are two guys I think in that price range at 55 to 5,000 where I see myself at least having interest in those two. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to play chalky Adam Thielen in 2022, but I mean, with that price in this matchup, it's a great way to pivot off of Jefferson, and if you're going to be stacking Cousins. But if he's going to be chalky, it's just another reason not to be playing Cousins because everyone's coming with him in ownership. So I think I prefer Zay Jones at that price range. He's just like younger and more likely to be the number one look for Lawrence. So I think for me, if I'm going in this range, which I probably will be, it's Jones for me. Another guy, it's Michael Gallup at 4,600. We saw him get 2 touchdowns last week. Maybe he's back, as mentioned before. They're probably going to run a lot more, but if they get a lead, maybe he catches a touchdown early on in that game, has like 340 in a touchdown or something. Because at that price, I think it's a pretty good price for Gallup as well.
I mean, we talked about it last week, but I mean, Tyler Lockett. We talked about Geno Smith in this
price.
one. He's just been getting it done. I talked about fading him last week because he had 4 weeks straight with a touchdown. Well, guess what? He just got 5. Is he going to make it 6? I think he's at least worth talking about.
Yeah, and didn't he have a run like this last year too?
Yeah,
where he just was
right.
getting a touchdown like every week. 6,500, same price every single week, and you can just play him every single week, and he gets there. If he doesn't get a touchdown, he's probably going to get like 6 catches and 80, 100 yards. So I think he's fine if you're in that price range. If you don't want to play Garrett Wilson or you have the extra 600 to go up to Lockett, I think it's perfectly fine to get there. What about like the cheapies?
Cheapies,
like 3,500 and under is actually interesting.
Because we're looking at what Cooks and Nico Collins could be out, so that puts Chris Moore at 34 and Dorsett at the 3K in play. Probably not doing that. I mean, maybe if you have to punt, but like my greater concern here is just wide receivers against the Cowboys have a tough time in general, and then you add in the fact that how bad the Texans are, and then you add in the fact that how bad Davis Mills is. Like I can't stomach that. I mean, I'm not going that cheap. I don't think I need to go that cheap for my lineup this week. I think if I'm going cheaper, I'm probably avoiding that 3K range. I would have interest in DJ Chark at 43, get a piece of this game. I don't necessarily think DJ Chark's going to be extremely owned. I think a lot of people are going to go other routes in this game. And DJ Chark has a full-time role and has been looking good since he's been back from injury. So I think if I had to go cheaper...
What about Jameson? Is it Jameson time?
I don't know if it's just yet, but we'll see.
Should be a good game for it.
Yeah, it could be. But I think we at least got one more week of DJ Chark. So yeah. I'm willing to go there.
I think if you want to play... Well, first off, in the cheapies, Kendall Hinton might get some steam here. 3,400 against the Chiefs, but I don't know. I don't really trust the Broncos offense anymore. One guy who I think is somewhat interesting... I like playing who's the chalkiest running back, play the wide receivers from that team instead. Robert Woods, 4,500, and Nick Westbrook. I think those two are somewhat interesting if you're not going to be playing Henry on a team and you want to still have a piece of that game. Mm-hmm. Having like a mini stack of Woods and Zay Jones being cheap is somewhat interesting to me. You could pay up at these other positions if you do that.
Any other wide receivers you want to talk about here? I think that I can't roll through this list right now. I can't find somebody that really interests me at this point. But
nope, I think not really looking at some of the guys with tougher matchups like the Chris Godwin, Mike Evans tier either. But I mean, Chris Godwin just gets there every week too. So wouldn't hate it if you do it. It's just a tough matchup.
Let's go 5. Pool of 5 wide receivers.
Sure. Jefferson, Amon Ra. I'll go with Garrett Wilson, and then Zay Jones. Is that 4?
Yeah, one
And
more.
Michael Gallup.
Perfect. All right. Shifting over to tight ends, man. I think I kind of have this down at this point in time. I'm not paying up. Travis Kelce 76 is a fine price, but again, it's Denver Broncos. I don't think I can. I think there's 2 ways that I'm going to go here. I think Greg Dulcich, 3,400 against Kansas City Chiefs. Again, it's tough to trust Russ Wilson, but Dulcich, he's got at least some big playability. But I think the direction that I want to go with Burks likely out is Chig Okonkwo. Chig Okonkwo, 2,700. They really ramped up his playtime and ramped up his just in general the opportunity he was getting last week, and he delivered. There's not a lot of options to throw to. Yes, Derrick Henry's going to get his, but they're going to have to throw the ball probably at least 20 times, right? So I think that at 2,700, he's an athletic dude. He can run after the catch. It only takes a couple. So Chig Okonkwo is a guy that I'm heavily looking at because it's a really good way to save some money. And 27 is just not that much. And then if you got a little bit extra money, I think Dulcich is a fine play over at 34.
Yeah, I think going back to my Woods point, like Chig might just be straight up a better play because of price. The issue is, Austin Hooper still is there, but Chig pretty much has a floor of 3 catches for 45 yards. Maybe he gets a touchdown for you. At this point, he's good in this offense. 2,700 is a great price. Hooper's 2,900, but I don't think you have to go there either. Dulcich is probably going to be one of the highest owned of these tight ends, 3,400. Talent's there. People like him. You can play Travis Kelce any week, but I mean, in cash is hard to do it. I'd probably not go more than like Hawkinson. Like Hawkinson and Fireman, they're 2 other guys who each week do it, but like you could save 1,800, just get Chig and be probably fine at the tight end position. The way the tight end position has been working this year, actually even the past couple of years, but it's like these guys that are priced up are the only ones that are really going to potentially break the slate, but every other tight end probably gets like 8 points and is fine.
Cool. I mean, honestly, you got anything else here at tight end you want to talk about? I mean, that's the direction I'm going. It's pretty straightforward for myself.
No, I think what I had mentioned earlier about Hawkinson, I think I would play him in Cousins teams, but I don't know if I would just play him by himself. So that 5,100 tag is a little tough. I don't think I'll go like double tight end this week. Probably viable if you want it, but I don't know about the upside for them.
All right, close things out here. Defense, special teams. We talked about liking Tyler Huntley, but I think Steelers at 28 kind of fits well with builds that I have. I think either side of that ball, honestly, Ravens even at 33, if you got the money, is pretty solid. I would go either way with Steelers or Ravens. Those are two plays that I'm pretty comfortable with that I find myself going to a decent amount. I think Bucks at 29 because Brock Purdy's being rolled out there. There's kind of that range. I don't really feel comfortable much below the Steelers at 28. But again, it's really just kind of punting and getting different. But usually Steelers or Bucks, it's a $100 difference is the direction that I've been finding myself going with the cash that I have.
And I think if you go the Foreman route, you can go way down to Panthers D. I don't know if you have to go super cheap at defense this week, but there's not really a ton of them that are sticking out, this 2,900 range that you just mentioned. Probably the best of them. If you can get up to the Cowboys defense, I don't know, it's tough to do, but they're probably just raw projection wise the best play. But yeah, there's not really cheap defenses that are standing out to me. I kind of like the Jets if you want to play that narrative that Allen gets somewhat shut down again, and you want to do that Donovan Knight stack with them. So I think Jets are probably the only other one under 3K that I'm looking at.
Final thoughts. Week 14, Lou.
That's an interesting week. I think last week was pretty straightforward. This one, you could do a few different things. You can pivot if needed, if you see there's a lot of these trains of the same lineup that are being rolled out in a lot of double ups. So if you see that happening and you're on, say, Huntley, if you could find the 100, go up to Goff, like do something different. If everyone is on this same lineup, do one thing different, and you're more likely to outplay them. If you were to have the same lineup, it happened to me a lot last week. You're in this long train and everyone cashes, but they cash for less than double up. So it's almost more worth it to go against the tide in this state of DFS.
Plug the work, plug the Twitter, my man.
At Lucky_Ludog, work at Lucky Trader, doing their DFS content for DraftKings Rainmakers as well.
You can find me on Twitter at FFTylero. That's all we have today, folks. Don't forget, tell somebody you love them. Later.